My son saw my wife's treason. He suffered psychological trauma. My name is Mike. I'm from the suburbs of Chicago, and this is a story I never thought I'd tell. Sara and I have been married for over 10 years. I work at a local firm, doing accounting, nothing exciting but stable. A year ago, I would have said I lived an ordinary life, like the average American. Stable job, a small house with a mortgage, and a 10-year-old son, Jake, my pride and joy. But on October 15, 2023, this stable world turned to ruins. Jake, my curious, energetic boy, came home earlier than I did. That day, I was late at work, and Jake walked into the house right when Sara was with another man, our acquaintance Tom. He saw them together, and in a way no child should ever witness. I can't even imagine how traumatizing that must have been for him, the confusion he must have felt in that moment. That evening, when I came home, he didn't say anything. He just sat silently with a book in his hands, but I could see that something had happened. The next morning, over breakfast, he spoke a few words that tore me apart. "Dad, why was Mom with Uncle Tom in your bed?" That moment was the point of no return. I felt like my life had lost its foundation. Just weeks before, I genuinely believed that Sara was my partner, my safe place. That she was someone I could rely on, even on the hardest days. I had always tried to keep things together, despite our financial challenges, working overtime to pay the bills and support the family. How many times did I put my own needs aside for them? How many times did I skip a break just to provide for them? And now, all of that betrayal, a shattered life I can't put back together. Since that day, Jake has changed. He stopped joking around with me, withdrew, as if he were behind a glass wall. Nightmares started. I heard his cries calling for me in his sleep, asking me to come, to hold him. I'd sit by his side, trying to comfort him, but I knew this was the result of what he had to see. He's developed a fear and distrust of the world. I can't explain to him what happened. I can't give him a simple reason for what his mother did, who now seems like a stranger to him. And you know what hurts the most? He started avoiding Sara. This was his mother, who just yesterday was his closest person, but now he's afraid to even be in the same room with her. Inside him, a deep sense of distrust towards adults is growing, and I am powerless to prevent it. Sara is acting as if nothing happened. She doesn't care that our son won't talk to her, that he's having these nightmares. She justifies herself. "It was a moment of weakness, you should understand me." But she doesn't see that my connection with our son is now being torn apart. And I don't know how to piece these fragments back together. I used to believe that I could endure anything for Jake's sake. But now the question is different. How can I help him cope with this trauma? I don't know where to go or who to turn to. Can I shield him from this? He deserves peace and love more than anyone, and I can't even console him. How do I keep living when everything I valued is crumbling before my eyes? Has anyone gone through something like this? Should I tell Jake the whole truth, or should I support Sara just for his sake? I'm lost. Reddit user comments, StrayDad32. Man, I can't imagine what you're feeling. The worst part is how this is affecting your child. He shouldn't have been exposed to this. Have you thought about seeking help from a therapist for Jake? Maybe they can help with his nightmares. Hang in there. Rising Phoenix 88. What you're describing is a real trial. Your support as a father is so important to your son right now. It will be the key to his healing. But your wife must face the consequences of her actions. Maybe a strong stand is needed for her to understand the impact of her behavior. Hardmom_74. Mike, a friend of mine, went through something similar. Her son was also exposed to a parent's betrayal, and it was devastating. They sought help from a child therapist, and over time, he began to open up. My advice: do everything you can to give him support, even if it means making big changes in your family. Help Not Hate 42. Life sometimes throws us challenges that break us. But sometimes, these situations show us who truly matters. This might be the moment you need to act and protect your son from further trauma. Since Jake saw Sara with Tom, several weeks have passed. My family looks normal only on the outside, but inside, everything has rotted. It's almost like living on a minefield, where even the smallest misstep, a word, a glance, can set off an explosion. Last week, Sara and I tried to talk honestly. It was November 19th, a chilly evening in our little town near Chicago. I asked her to have a conversation after Jake went to bed. I thought she would want to talk about our issues, about what she sees in our son. However, everything she said boiled down to empty excuses. Her words only disappointed me further. "Mike, you have to understand, it was a mistake. Tom means nothing to me," she said. When I heard that, I was stunned. How can someone mean nothing when your child is now afraid to sleep at night? If it was really that simple, why am I the one left to carry the weight, trying to fix her mistakes? That evening, I felt a real anger building in me for the first time. I no longer saw in Sara the woman I once loved. She became a stranger, a person who betrayed not just me, but our child as well. And while I seem to be the only one worried about Jake's mental health, Sara continues to live as if nothing happened. She stubbornly avoids even the topic of his therapy. After that conversation, I realized I couldn't handle this alone. 2 days later, on November 21st, I scheduled an appointment with a child psychologist, Dr. Anderson. He's a trusted therapist from Chicago, someone I can rely on. I hoped he could help Jake at least partially get rid of his nightmares. After the first session, Dr. Anderson told me that Jake had suffered a serious trauma and that we had a long road ahead. Each time I leave Jake at his session, my heart breaks. The last time, he came out of the room in tears, but still didn't say a word about what he saw. Maybe he's just not ready to talk about it. Maybe he doesn't yet understand what happened. Or maybe he's afraid it will shatter his world even more. I only know one thing. For him, it's like a maze that will take us a long and difficult time to get through. Sara remains distant. She doesn't even ask how Jake's sessions are going, or what he's feeling. She doesn't care how this affects him. There's not an ounce of responsibility in her for the wounds she's caused our child. If only you knew how many times I've asked myself over these weeks why she's become so cold, as if our son means nothing to her. Maybe I'll never find the answer. With each session, I see Jake changing. His nightmares still persist. One night, when he woke up screaming, I heard him yell in his sleep, "Don't go in there!" Those words are still stuck in my head. Maybe that's how his mind is trying to block out the memory of that day. I feel that I need help as much as Jake does right now, but I can't afford to fall apart. I'm his anchor, and I have to hold on, even if it's destroying me inside. Sara has left me, not physically, but emotionally, and that's the worst part. We live in the same house, but now it's not a family. Her ignoring Jake's trauma is the final blow. Right now, I don't know what to do next. I want to protect my son from all of this, from a mother who is so indifferent to his feelings. And every day, I ask myself, will I ever be able to forgive her for what she's done? Reddit user comments, RealDad1984. The way your wife is ignoring Jake's situation is shocking. It's a total disregard for his feelings and pain. It's heartbreaking to hear about such coldness. You're very strong, Mike. Do everything you can so that your son feels your support. Mom of 3 INFL. Mike, I feel your pain and anger. My son once had to go through something similar, and it leaves scars. Hang in there. Therapy may help, but it will be a hard road. I believe you can do it. Strong but broken. I know what you're feeling right now. You have to wear a mask of strength, even when you're broken inside. Jake needs you more than ever. Sara must answer for what she's done, and realize her actions. You're on the right path. Quiet Strength 92. Your story reminded me of my dad, who once fought for me the same way. Stay strong, Mike. Know that your love and efforts will definitely help Jake. A lot has changed since my last post, but not for the better. November ended, and December brought with it cold and darkness, not only outside but also within our family. In the past few weeks, Jake has attended 4 sessions with Dr. Anderson. Each time I bring him to the office on Chicago's west side, he looks more and more confused. Dr. Anderson says this is normal. The trauma rises to the surface before it begins to fade, but watching my son suffer is unbearable. On December 5th, something happened that made me realize Sara is no longer someone I can trust. After another session, Jake asked to stay alone with the doctor for a few minutes, then came out to me, his face as white as snow. His words still echo in my head. "Dad, I want to leave Mom. I'm scared to be in the same house with her." I sat in Dr. Anderson's office, trying not to show Jake my shock. My heart broke at his words. I knew the situation was bad, but I hadn't realized how deeply Sara's betrayal had traumatized him. After that conversation, I stayed alone with the doctor. He told me that Jake is afraid to go home, where his mother is, because it reminds him of the day he witnessed her betrayal. The doctor advised me to seriously consider separate living arrangements. As we drove home that day, I was in utter despair. We have about a 45-minute drive, and every minute I could only think about what to do next. At that moment, I realized that I could no longer stay with Sara. But the scarier question was, how to provide a safe and peaceful environment for Jake. I had to do everything possible to ensure he wouldn't be haunted by these memories anymore. That evening, I tried to talk to Sara again. She was sitting in our living room, wrapped in a blanket, watching a movie as if nothing had happened. It was hard for me even to approach her. I told her that Jake wanted to leave her, explaining that his therapist also recommended separating, but she just smiled and replied, "It's just a childish fear, Mike. Jake will forget all this with time. Stop being so dramatic." I looked at her, feeling ice wrap around my heart. How could she say that when her child was suffering? She seemed deaf to his pain, to our pain. I realized she had never truly felt responsible for Jake. Her indifference was another blow, perhaps even more painful than the betrayal itself. And that smile, as if nothing significant had happened, as if it wasn't her son who was pleading in his sleep not to let anyone into his room. I didn't sleep all night. My mind kept racing with thoughts. What now? How can I ensure a normal life for Jake, protect him from the woman he now fears? I realized I had no choice but to file for divorce. I needed not only to end this marriage but also to secure custody of Jake so he wouldn't have to stay with Sara. The next day, December 6th, I consulted a lawyer. I explained everything, told him about Jake's psychological trauma, the therapist's recommendations, and Sara's indifference. The lawyer said that with such evidence, I had a good chance of obtaining full custody, especially if the doctor agreed to testify in court. We're already preparing the documents for filing. Now my despair has turned into cold determination. I don't know how long this will take or what it will cost, but I'll do everything I can to make sure Jake doesn't suffer anymore. For the first time in all these weeks, I feel a glimmer of hope. This isn't an easy path, but it feels like I'm finally on the right side of this conflict. I have to do this for Jake. And when it's all over, I just want him to know that his father was there and did everything he could. Reddit user comments, True North Father. Mike, this is a very brave step. As a father, you're doing everything right. Jake needs protection, and if Sara isn't showing him any care, her behavior is simply unacceptable. I hope the court supports you, and that therapy helps Jake. HealingHeart_29. I know what it's like to see your child suffer and feel it's your duty to help. You're strong. The court battle won't be easy, but it's essential for Jake to have someone who'll protect him and provide a safe environment. All the support to you, Mike. Break the Cycle 22. Your wife seems so disconnected from reality that she doesn't even see the consequences of her actions. Your child's well-being is the priority, and you're right not to let this situation drag on. Stay strong, you're resilient. Warrior Mom 88. As a mom, I can't imagine treating a child this way, especially if he's traumatized. It hurts to hear what your son has had to endure, but with a father like you, he'll find peace. The odds are in your favor. Fight to the end. It's already December 20th. Christmas is soon, but there's no holiday spirit or tree in our home. After recent events, I decided to go all the way, to fight for full custody of Jake and start over. I thought that once Sara saw how serious I was, she might wake up or at least take some responsibility. but her reaction dealt me another blow. In our Cook County jurisdiction, we've already filed for divorce and are preparing for the first hearing, scheduled for early January. My lawyer said that Dr. Anderson's testimony and therapeutic plan will help demonstrate the need to limit Sara's influence on Jake, but I also know that courts tend to be cautious about limiting parental rights. Starting last week, Sara began to show her true colors. Last Saturday, she found out I filed for divorce. One evening, when I came home from work, she was in the kitchen, accusing me in a raised voice of turning Jake against her. "Do you understand that our son sees how you act? You ruined our marriage," she yelled. And this came from the person who left a vulnerable 10-year-old with unbearable psychological trauma. The past few nights, Jake has been sleeping in my room. He doesn't ask for it, but he seems afraid to be alone in his own room. One night, as I sat beside him, he whispered that he was most afraid of being alone with his mother. He barely talks about what he saw, but judging by his fears and his state, I understand that the past will haunt him for a long time. Honestly, I feel exhausted. Every night, I fall asleep thinking about the court case, long legal proceedings, paperwork, meetings, objections, new dates, and deadlines. Sometimes I feel like these steps are the last hope to restore stability for Jake. But at the same time, each document and each meeting with the lawyer reminds me of how far gone our problems are. Sara hasn't stopped trying to convince me that it's all my fault. She's even begun telling Jake that I want to take him away from her forever, that she'll fight for her right to see him. This is irresponsible and toxic. I feel that in this battle, I have to become a true protector for Jake because Sara is only harming his peace. Every time I think about it, I have one question: why didn't I see this sooner? Would these problems have been inevitable? Maybe I would have lost my family anyway. Now I'm focused on one thought only: not letting Jake fall into deeper despair. We all need peace, especially him, and I know that my mission is to support him and ensure the protection he can't get from his mother. This struggle exhausts me, but I'm willing to endure twice as much. The most important thing now is to create an environment for Jake where he's no longer haunted by the ghosts of that day. And I'm determined to see it through, even if it means ending up completely alone. Reddit user comments Resilient Mom 45. Mike, your patience and dedication are just amazing. It's so hard to fight for your child when the other parent openly disregards their feelings. Keep moving forward, no matter how hard the path. Jake needs you now. Divorced Dad 23. Now that you have the support of a lawyer and Dr. Anderson, don't back down. A long legal battle is not what anyone wants, but for your son, it's worth every minute. I know how tough it is to go through this, but the outcome will be worth it. Hope and Healing 92. Your fight is an example for all of us. A child needs a safe and healthy environment, and if the mother isn't providing that, then it's better for her not to be in the child's life on a daily basis. The legal system isn't easy, but know you're not alone. Just another parent. Seeing how you're dedicated to protecting Jake is so inspiring. Please don't let Sara or anyone else convince you otherwise. You're on the right path, and we all support you.